Hello and welcome back to the Rope Access and Climbing Podcast. Today we are talking with Micah from Peak Rescue about the Petzl RopeTrip. Now he has been a competitor and a judge at events that I've partaked in. He's been a competitor and a judge at these events. So let's get his perspective. If this is your first time here, please make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. So stay tuned. Step into your harness and get ready for a podcast about the vertical world. All right. All right, well, let's dive into today's episode. Today, I am joined with Micah from Peak Rescue in the United States. So, for the people that don't know who you are, where you come from, let's dive into some introductions and go from there. So, where are you from? What do you do? Go from there.
I'm Micah Rush. I work for Peak Rescue. We're a company based out of Casper, Wyoming, Central America. We are a training / rescue standby / response, emergency response company. We delve in a lot in different things as far as training. We train from rope access to SAR teams to oil and gas to fire departments. Yeah, we kind of do it all. Myself, I'm a IFMGA full mountain guide. Rope access technician. I have a bunch of certs that nobody cares about that we always talk about, that it really just matters when you show up to class is basically what matters. So we do a lot with the military also. Comes from the full mountain guide side. They come to us and then we teach them small team rescue and dive into that.
Excellent. So today we'll be talking about rope access competitions, primarily the Petzl RopeTrip series. Both Micah and myself have competed at these events as well. He has had the luxury of being a judge at one of the events that I've competed at. So we're going to dive into that and kind of get a perspective as competitor and judge. All right, so the first question I have lined up here today is, let's just start out with why. And kind of where I'm going with that is, why did you get involved with these competitions? And kind of dive into that.
The simple answer is competition breeds excellence and innovation is really where I go off on that. But I started off in my career with competitive climbing competitions. I was a competitive climber, competed a lot in that. I got into ice climbing. I was competitive with that. I got on board with a bunch of companies that would send me around and just compete when I was a younger kid. And I saw the value in that. I would sort of go all over and compete in this. And at a young age, I would say, I was always competitive, but I saw that this was like, it just bred. I'd come back and on my, whatever route I was working on, I was traditionally a crack climber where I'm from, but I saw that I was like, whoa, sport climbing does help crack climbing or whatever it was. And so my competitive side went to that. And then when I got into where I was doing ultra running, where I was running 100 or 50 miles through mountains to train for big alpine objectives, if I was going for records, and I saw the value of it, like there is something in this to progress our sport, and just being a climber didn't help that, right? So so moving in multiple directions helped that a ton. So that was my background, and so when I got into rope rescue, I was a guide at a young age. It's what all climbers do, right? And eventually, you have to make money doing something. You live out of your car, which is sort of the norm now, but back in the day, I say that with apostrophes. But if you were living out of your car, you were sort of a bum, and we tried to do whatever we could for work. So I was guiding, and I had mentors, and one of the things they said is competing will help you with this. And I remember thinking, really? And so I went around and competed, and that helped me in my climbing world. And I caught on to that pretty fast. It was then I owned a couple climbing gyms for about 10 or 11 years. Went from climbing bum to actually having a job with managing a gym, and then I had the opportunity to take it over and buy it. So I got the gym and really realized like what that took, which was a whole different world. But in the end of that, I was like, well, owning a climbing gym, I need a real job with a retirement. So I got on the fire department, and I got on the fire department, and they were like, oh, the rescue program. And you know this like mountain rescue stuff. You should take over our program. You must be pretty good at this, right? So I took that over it, and what I found was it was a whole different world from what I had known, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, like, we all love ropes, and so for me to get into that world and combine them both was like, it was huge for me. It was like, well, this is the world I come from, and these guys love ropes, but they're just, they use a bunch of different gear than me do, that I do in my world. And so I saw that pretty early. Both those competition and so joining those industries like really made sense to me, I guess. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I sort of just like digressed, I think.
That's awesome. No, so do you think that rope access competitions, and let specify that we're talking, the Petzl RopeTrip, that's the one that I'm most familiar with. Um, is this good for the rope access industry, or does it shine a positive light or a negative light on the industry as a whole?
I only think competition can shine a brighter light on the industry. And I guess why I say that is because we have, I don't know, competition breeds importance from the start of it is positive change in the industry as far as what we can push. We're so regulated in rope access. It depends if you're MSHA or OSHA or whatever it is. In Canada, it's WorkSafe or whatever it is. We're so regulated that we get really good at these as a company or a person. And then we don't step out of those, right? If I'm a good company in Canada and I know WorkSafe and whatever it is I'm regulated under, I just get really good at that. And if I'm good at that, I'm good, Mikey, right? Like
Yeah.
that's all I need to know. But if competition, it's like, well, here's move on. Let's move on and see what's actually, let's push the limit. Let's give you these really hard situations that are theoretical, and let's give them to you in this weird version. We're gonna push our industry, and it breeds like, I'll tell you, for instructors that I have to myself, it just breeds positive change. And we're only going to get better doing this. If we just have this theoretical, like, this is what you should do if this, because of this accident or whatever, we're never going to progress. And I think these things kind of push that limit. And it's the only time in our industry, as far as that rope access industry, we can push that a little bit. We can get into ARB technique, the arborists. I love them because they can do whatever they want, really. And they get to push it. We don't get to. And so I think competition, this is the time for us to shine and really think like, is that worth it? Or I'm going to use this piece of gear with this technique. Is that acceptable? And this is the only time you get to do that, unless it's you and me at the shop at our training facility saying like, hey, Mikey, what do you think of this? Or I don't know, Micah, let's try this and let's call Petzl or CMC or, Skylotech or whoever it is and see if this is acceptable.
Yeah.
To me, competition, I get pretty fired up because I came from that background in the climbing world, and I see it in the rescue world and the rope access, RopeTrip. It's, yeah, I think I can only get better, and I see a lot of positive coming out of it. See,
Yeah.
I'm digressing. You should probably stop.
I'm in the same boat. Like, I think that it's super positive for not just the industry, because it breeds that creativity and ninja aspect of things as well. Like, it gets people outside of their norm and outside of their comfort level, and you throw them in these fun obscure kind of situations, and you really get to see people come out of their shell. And I've competed at a number of these events, and I would love to compete at more of them in the future. Maybe I do dive in and find another team and go and put something on, but who knows where that may lead. But I think that more people should get involved and more people should consider doing these competitions, because the amount of stuff that I learned from these competitions, because it's not just strictly rope access when you're doing a Petzl competition, like they're throwing fire rescue techniques, arborist techniques at you, and different scenarios that you've never encountered before. But like that's how you learn, right? Stepping outside of the box and doing new things. So it's really interesting. And, the organizers, out of all the competitions that I've been at, all the organizers have done a phenomenal job in creating these massive scenarios for us to just push the limits and, test new equipment and test the equipment and push the equipment to its fullest potential. That's what we're always trying to do and always trying to strive for. And, competitions really gives you that ability to do that.
Yeah, it's that sharing ideas and just seeing those new techniques that we're bringing over from other
Mm-hmm.
industries, right? That's like this amazing thing that happens at competitions where we don't see it other places, right? We get stuck in our little worlds. And of course, I'm going to tell you I'm the greatest in my world, but let's go out to the bigger world. And Mikey, seeing you, it was cool. Maybe as being a judge and a competitor at these, it's cool seeing both sides of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, seeing somebody go through something and these teams work through it. I love going through this and just watching it. And you learn so much from everybody there. And I always go back to I remember my first firefighter competition. It was hilarious, which is a sort of a meathead competition where you just run upstairs and run hose and stuff. I remember thinking that. And I remember my mentor in that, he just said, yeah, the biggest thing is you're the one in the arena. And it was a Theodore Roosevelt quote, but he's really good about it. I was really bad. He's like, yeah, you're the one in the arena with the blood and the dust in your face. Like, don't be that timid soul who doesn't know defeat
Mm-hmm.
or defeat or victory, because you're out there doing it. Those guys that talk all this game, like, I don't care where they're at. If they're not in there doing it, they can't talk. Like, you're out there putting it out there on the line. And as a company, it's pretty big, right?
Yeah.
So if I go there as Peak Rescue and we're like, yeah, we're going to go there and do this, and I completely fudge it up, which we'll talk about that in 2020. I was supposed to be a judge, and we got thrown in there last minute. And in the end, I loved that. And it's weird. People are like, that's crazy, Mikey. And I was like, this is what I love. Like, you get thrown into the arena, and how you perform is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
you hang it out there, and I'm okay with that. I think it doesn't matter who you are. If you're in the arena, as you know, um, you're going to learn something. You could get last place and
Yeah.
learn something in that competition, and you can be first place and you're going to learn a ton in that competition. Um, Man, I can't think enough of competition, and I love it in rescue. And I think the big win I'm going to say is going to be like when you win Grimp Day, the rope trip, and I got to think of something else for like totally like American style, that you have to win all three of those and get the trifecta. Like,
That would be
that would
amazing.
be my goal, right? That's amazing, right? You win all these, and it's not that you win them; it's just that, like, you understand all those industries, and
Mm-hmm.
then a backcountry, right? So like these small teams I teach with, special forces, and I teach them as a mountain guide. We teach them all these different techniques, and I bring over rope access techniques, or the new arbor reeve that we have Peak Rescue designed out of a arborist, Maurice out of Canada. Maurice is the arborist king to me. And so he was showing us these ninja tricks, and I was like, Maurice, that's like that rescue. We could never do that in the real world. But if I add a couple more ropes and do these things, and we give him props that, and he's like, oh, Micah, these are, you came up with that reeve, but in the end, Maurice did. We just innovated on it, and
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't have helped if I wouldn't have dived into that album. And I think the arbor reeve solves a lot of problems in the backcountry or industry. Um, and that was 2 years ago. I just got a memory in my thing about in my I think it was one of my social media horrible things that we all subscribe to. I got a memory that was like, yeah, you and Maurice came up with this arbor reeve, and I think like, woof, imagine that the arbor reeve wouldn't be a real world thing unless Maurice and I would have hooked up. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's the collaboration of all these different industries coming into these competitions, and then seeing people like you, Mikey. In general, I was a judge at your competition, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys won worlds. And whew, did I win? Because as a judge, it's totally different. You see, like, this is my station. I have all my things what I would do, and then you guys come in. You're like, psh. I was like, oof. I'm not telling this. I wouldn't have done that. I would have done this. Dude, and they killed it, right? Like you have your world and then it gets blown away. Like what people do. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think, how can we, and you have to have you have to come into it with a humble aspect too. Like, we all have these certifications that just like, blah, 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 blah. I have this, I've done this. In the end, let's all get together, have fun, relax our shoulders, and just like, let's share this knowledge and let's all bring this elevated like standard up here. Like this is where we should be. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter where you were before, where the industry is before. Let's bring it to here. And I don't care that you're reading a 20-year-old book, right?
Yeah.
Like this is where we want to be. So it was really cool. This is a total plug to you, but I could feel like, judging your team in that was 2018, right? That
Yeah.
was crazy. Yeah. Like, I learned a lot by watching all those teams and watching you guys go. And the whole time you want to be on the winning team, right? You want to be, I could do that. I could do that. But you guys were getting it given to you, the day of or the night before,
Yeah.
where I've got to see it for a week. And,
Yeah.
and realistically, with Petzl RopeTrip in America, it was Brian Cruikshank and Keith Lazinski. Those guys have been dreaming this up for a year. And
Yeah.
they had such an amazing program. And I thought it was really cool. It was really work oriented, but they had these systems that I showed up and I'd come up with mine and they'd run me through it. And how I did it compared to you guys coming in was totally different. Sometimes it was the same, but I
Yeah.
loved it. I love that aspect of the sport. So yeah.
Yeah. It's, you could, as a judge, you're going to be on that one station, checking the boxes, making sure that everything's kosher in that one section. But yet, you're going to see, in 2018 in Salt Lake City, we had, I think was 14 or 15 teams competing. 2016, I think there was 33 teams from all over the world there. So it kind of depends, but I mean, like you could see 33 different ways from 8 different cultures coming through and learn so much from being a judge there, because like us as a competitor going through that stage, we're going to go through that stage one time, right? In most cases. Now, obviously a little bit different in 2018 in Germany, but you know, it's kind of one of those things, and maybe it would be sometimes a little bit more fair in one way would be if no one was allowed to watch another team. Everyone's isolated, and it was only one person at a time, and all the other teams were isolated. That makes it a lot more fair, because being the sacrificial lamb, being the first team on any maneuver is the worst.
Did you hear about Rope Trip 2020 in America? Is this why you're bringing this up, Mikey?
No. I'm
Oh, I
I'm
love
just
it.
talking. I was like, what was it, 2016? We were, I think I want to say a third or fourth team on the balloon exercise in the shop. And,
Mm.
we were the first team to actually come in under the time cap for that event. Now, that was an amazing event, flying through the sky, putting sandbags on balloons. Couldn't ask for a better day. But, but, at the end of the day, like, my token there was, lower down and your time stopped when you touch the ground. 20-minute time cap. I forget what our time was, but what I did, both my teammates, Tom and Louie, yelled down at me, like, don't touch the ground, don't touch the ground. What I did, I inverted myself with my marker, and my marker was, I put that on the bullseye. And, like, I was the first person to do that, but on the downturn effect of that is everybody started doing it after me, because they're like, that is what you need to do. Like, there's no way that your toe or your hand could accidentally touch the ground if literally the marker is the lowest point. So yeah, once you get to that position, just invert yourself. So there's those sort of things, but like, you're that sacrificial lamb being like the first like 3 people, and everyone's like, okay, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny you mentioned that. So that's in 2020. We were the first up for this. It's the famous Solarplex, but which is amazing to those guys. But I learned that being thrown out there, like we had a couple weeks to know before we were doing the competition because I was supposed to be judging it, and we were like, oh yeah, I could throw together a team. Keith, I got this, right? And
Don't
so
worry
you go
about
out
it.
there and they're like, yeah, you're first in the Solarplex. It was amazing to watch everybody progress. And I was like, oh yeah, being a judge, you'd be like, yeah, and people get to watch. And after that, I remember we talked about like, maybe we give that first team out like some points, um, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But in the end, you're 100% right. There is those little things in competition that like that like you learn as a thing. But in the end, I learned a ton. I still loved it. I was the first one out. I completely like it was cool to see like I was the first one to figure it out, and people just progressed on me, and
Yeah.
I don't regret that. I'm like I
No.
wasn't too far off the mark, a little bit, but like everybody got to see me and be like, oh, don't do that or do this or like
Yeah.
these little tweaks. And in the end, I think that's what competition breeds. Like, yeah, yeah. They're like, ooh, don't do that. Like he started off with two micro tracks. Ooh, just throw a carabiner in there and grab both ropes or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever it may
In
be.
the end,
Yeah.
though, I was super psyched to be a part of it. And you gotta be light, right? We can be pretty serious. Competitive, we're all super competitive. But in the end, you have to look back and be like, yeah, it's okay. It was hard for me, but at the end, it's like, it's all good, and we all know where it's at. And the amount of time that the judges and the comp organizers, the year or the months before they put in to those
Oh yeah.
competitions, you can see as a competitor. And I saw that in this. It was like, oh yeah, Keith, I can tell you have gone through this intimately for the last 2 months. There are those little things that you did that were amazing, and the rules or whatever. And I really think that's important to point out. Those guys do an amazing job
Oh,
at
hands
RopeTrip as
down.
far as like they run through it. There's aren't the guys that's putting out there be like, what would you do? Right? These guys
Yeah.
run through it multiple times and they see the little intricacies that we have to go through as rope access technicians to run through that. And I think that's pretty important to throw out. Like those guys are amazing to me, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, kudos to all the organizers, the riggers, and everybody involved, the volunteers and the employees of the organization to put on these events for us competitors because it gives us that one time a year, 2 times a year that we get to just throw it down and you know follow Petzl's rule book, not a organization's rule book, and literally throw it down. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
You throw it
um,
down at every level. It's pretty fun to go down there. Like, you hang out with all your bros, get to see them compete, get to compete, go out and like have a few beers with them, and like not worry about are we using 8 mil cord or 11 mil or 12 and a half. Like, it's insane. Like,
yeah,
it's just so cool to be like, yeah, we just go have fun. We compete and we learn. Like, oh man, I learned so much from this competition.
so
And
much.
yes, so much. And I'll tell you, as a like leading peak rescue, I have my instructors and I'm like, yeah, we're going to go do this. One of the guys I took through there was a level one, super bright dude. And both of them were, but it's crazy to see him doing things in the competition he would never have done until another level. And he's doing it on top of level three. He's progressed so fast in this industry. It's hard to explain
Yeah,
that he took off from that and was like, it was like, yeah, Toph, you did things in that I'd never done, or Eric, you did things in there that yeah I've never done. And it was super fun, right? Like um, the progression as a company or as an individual is I can't say enough about competition. And
yeah,
I think people put in or take out what they put into it. If you go into it with this like whatever I'm being pushed into this, or if you go into the open mind, you can see all these possibilities and get out
yeah,
of that little world that we live in. That if I just lived in my world, I think I did the greatest job every day, right? Like
yeah,
8 mils the best, and titanium scarabs is the only way to go. But it turns out there's another world out there, and you have to decide what you're responding to and in how you're going to progress your industry or your sport or whatever it is. That's the way we're going to progress in this world, and I love it. So it's yeah, to me, competition I can't say enough about because I wish I went on a rescue every day at work. I run a heavy rescue, and I'm on a regional response team, and then privately we run a private response company, which is a crazy deal in itself. We end up in the middle of international waters and foreign countries, but um, all that aside, if I didn't do that, I would just think I was doing a great job, right? If I'm really good at this, that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
in the end, you'll be really good at this by 100% if you just keep telling yourself you're not the best. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and like one of the things, I'll just throw this out there is, we were at that event and we had to use a throw bag to go over the beam, create a pull through. That was my event specifically.
Mm.
And here I am looking at all four walls being like, well, I've never used a throw bag. This is going to be fun. Like I'm a rope access technician, I work in an industrial environment. I'm a rope access trainer in a pretty little training center with aluminum truss everywhere. Like, why do I need a throw bag? But
This is
needless
a
to
stupid
say,
arb technique.
yeah, exactly. This is an arb technique. Like I don't have those little spiky thingies on my feet to climb up trees vertically and use a crazy chainsaw while I'm hanging off a rope. Like who's silly enough to do that? Yeah, arborists are, and they do it every day. But you know, so basically, I walked up to the True Work team and I was just, hey guys, like, do you have a spare throw bag I can borrow? I need to learn how to use this thing. So like they're like, yeah, no problem. Here, I'll give you my throw bag. This is how you use it. Use it. Blah blah blah. I spent 2 hours outside my hotel that night throwing it at the side of the hotel.
No,
That's
that's
how I learned.
awesome. That is
That's how I learned how. And then
it's super cool.
I came in like second or third place in that event that day.
I was the same, Mikey. Like watching you, I thought you were like a pro. Like that's pretty cool. And it's funny you say that. Like Brian Cruikshank and Keith Lozinski, who put that on.
Yeah.
Power to them. I came in as the only outsider. I was the only non-Petzl guy that came in as a judge, and those guys are amazing to me. Super good dudes. And when I first showed up the day one, they're like, "Hey, do you want to run through some of the competition? We have the." And I was like, "Oh, this is a test." I remember looking around and be like, "Oh yeah." And they're like, "Yeah, you just go against Keith or whatever." And it was like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome." In the end, those guys did a great job of being like, "Yeah, let's throw him through the ringer." And like, in the end, like I see people like you, like I've never used this. It would have looked like you had done that your whole life, Mikey. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. It was cool in judging from that aspect. Judging, I got to see all these how I would do it, how you guys did it, and then seeing you go on to win worlds, which is
Yeah.
proud to you. You guys went on to Germany and like crushed.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, oh yeah, I know those guys. Yeah, Mikey. And I was like, yeah, I was at that station when he like did this or this. But like, it's cool to see that competitive. And then we're all friends, right? We go over there, we compete.
Absolutely.
It's like, sweet dude, we're all competitive in the day. In the end, we're all gonna have a beer at night, and we've all learned a ton out of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos on you. Learn how to throw the bag the night before. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I literally borrowed that throw bag and I spent 2 hours trying to learn how to use a throw bag the night before the competition. I was the first person up the next morning. Woo! Um, and my boss, Sam Griggs, there's like, so how did the training go? I'm like, oh, it went good. It went, I was like a 75% hit rate. He's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, so how do you think it's going to go today? And I'm like, as long as and this is the confidence that I had. I was like, if I can get it over the beam in the first 4 shots, I will come in the top 5. And he's just like, okay. And like I
Nice.
said, I think I came in second or third place. And,
That's
the arborist from True Work beat me.
yeah.
I don't have anything to, like, I don't
You
feel
do
bad
it.
about my position when a professional competitive arborist beats me. I'm okay with that.
They were showing us their techniques before they went, like how they do it. And I'm like, you can throw like 60 feet up or whatever it was. It was crazy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never seen that before. It was insane, the technique they had. Like
Yeah.
yo-yoing the rope before they flipped. It was just like, okay, yep, that's why
Yeah.
you guys are where you are. And that's what I love about competition. I never would have seen that stuff coming into it. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's to me, we always want to be a competitor, but being a judge, you get to see however many teams come through all these different ways, and none of them are bad.
No.
Some are just more efficient than the others, right? We're talking about seconds or millimeters or whatever it is. Like, you have to remember this. Or like, yeah, this team came in fifth out of whatever, and it's like, yeah, that became millimeters, or that was between
Yeah,
five
that
seconds.
could be ounces of water.
Yes, ounces of water. The duck, yes, the duck where you're pouring water in and like
Or the
somebody
water
misjudges
bucket
the pipe.
challenge. Like the water bucket challenge. That
Yes,
could literally be ounces of
yeah.
water in a
So we're
bucket.
getting judged on like, how many, if you spill any, and if the duck gets to the top of the point, right? You guys remember that, and you have to get the duck
Uh,
to his home. The duck has to actually make it in the pipe, right? So
yeah.
the duck does have a home. You have to get him there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kudos to Keith and them thinking about putting the duck in the tube. Like
insane. And like that
it
you
was
fill the
amazing.
duck up, because we have to forget, as competitors, we want it fun for us, but the people watching
The
also
visual.
have a good
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
And so people watching were like, either you're a competitor that got bumped out and you're just having a hilarious time watching everybody, or
Yeah.
you've shown up off the street and you're like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. These guys are using these ropes to get a duck
A
into the
duck from
pipe.
one place and up the pipe and
Yeah. And he has to raise to a certain point. This is kind of amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think kudos to those guys. And I've always thought that when I was putting on competitions, if it works out how you are, you're super psyched, and everybody's mad, you just blame it on the competitor, the person next to you but they set this up. That was
Yeah.
Mikey. Mikey
Yeah.
did this he did this, this version of this. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So on a personal side, like your personal experience, you've both judged and competed. Now, out of both of those, what would you say would be the most entertaining event, or your most favorable event that you've witnessed, either as a judge or as a competitor, and why?
That's ooh,
So
that's
like if you were sitting around the round table like we are right now, and you're
yeah.
just like, okay, this event at this was phenomenal. These guys did this, this, this. It was just absolutely, or like it could be one that you were competing in, and it's just something that you remember.
It's pretty easy for me. It's the finals. Always the finals.
Yeah.
I think as a judge, you're looking at what you're judging for and what people do in the finals and how stress hits them and how they perform. And then as a competitor, the same thing, watching that same thing or doing that same thing. The finals, everybody's just that buildup, right? Now we're down. We've had multiple teams going all day, and now we're down to these final guys, whether it's a rope access competition or a climbing competition. It's these guys are sort of battling it out, and to see the professionalism and what exudes out of those people is mind blowing to me. And I don't care
Hmm.
where you're at, what seat in the house you have, you're on edge and you're super psyched. And as a judge, I will tell you, I'm on edge as much as everybody else watching. I just have to discrepancies, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, ooh, yeah. But in the end, everybody's on edge watching this like incredible thing. And it's a hard scenario. It's fast paced. So to me, always the finals, it's that culmination. And that's
Yeah.
pretty easy because as a competitor or a judge, man, that's pretty exciting. And it's always fun to see what innovation breeds in that, because that's what competition really does. Is that breeds that innovation, and
Yeah.
to see people do different things is like, holy cow, I would have never done that. And man, would I got my butt kicked if I would have, if I would have went against Mikey Stevenson, that would have been pretty ugly, and he would have destroyed me. So back to the drawing boards with my training thought or whatever
Yeah.
it was. And so it's cool to see that, I guess. Yeah, and
Yeah.
taken away. Finals,
Yeah.
man.
Finals. So like just in that on that note there, talking about the finals 2018 Salt Lake City. Um, Side by side, GeoArc to the left of us, where I'm on the high wall up at the top, dropping down the letters down to my teammates. The question I had for the judge was, am I allowed to create an anchor on my working line, pick it to my working line, and and lower it down to my coworker, my competitor? He's like, well, how? Like, he was really confused by what I was trying to get at. The judge wasn't really sure what I was trying to, orchestrate, if you will. But then next to me, GeoArc there, great, great group of guys over there. They did a hell of a job all weekend there. But, they built an anchor on bolts on the wall and picked the letter off that, basically off a hard link, and had to lower it down from the wall. Where I was just basically, I put a rescue sender on my working line, created a hull, picked it, basically just, on an extra rope and a rig, basically used my legs to pick it off because they were only about 75 pounds or so, these letters. And I just lowered it down there. And then for me to get to the next letter, I just popped the rescue center off, descended down a couple feet, popped it back on, did the same thing where, the other team had to basically break into the anchor every single time, and it was time consuming. And then afterwards, the judge is like, "That's what you meant." Okay.
So that was the one I was judging, Mike. And I remember thinking, like, when you guys got done, we told you guys, like, this wasn't a timed event. Like, you could take as much time. And you guys were like, "Oh, okay." And I remember thinking, like, "Oh, you guys thought outside the box. Like, we're going to go as fast and as efficient as possible." And those things are what we breed in competition. I love that. You guys were like, "Yeah, we're going to just try this. We're going to do this, this, this." And you coming down, we're like, "Oh, okay. We were thinking that, but this makes sense." And you can have all these rules when you do these competitions and you do different iterations if you're judging it or building the scenario. But in the end, people like you come in and are like, "Well, can I just do this?" And you're like, "Damn it. Okay. Yeah, you can do that."
We didn't think about that. Damn
yeah,
it.
we did. But in the end, I came away, and it's hard because as a competitor or a judge, you come away with a lot of knowledge. And I tell people, come and watch. Those things are amazing just to watch other teams. Because what I think a lot of people say is like, "I don't want to hang myself out there. I feel pretty our skills aren't there yet." And it's like, come do it. I brought a level 1 to this competition, and they literally are at another level now because of this, and they moved through all their skills in level 1, 2, or 3 because of this, and it wasn't hard for them because they saw what was out there, and it was like that's where our world's at. I think that's to me, competition is just really, and it's fun. Let's be real. All the rope dorks get together, we have some beers, we get to compete, and in the end we get to see new countries or different places and share ideas, and that's fun.
So what do you miss most about competition with our current state of the world? Obviously, with everything happening, travel restrictions, gathering size restrictions, et cetera, like, what's the one thing you're just like, you just miss about competition, excluding, hey, I want to go compete?
The biggest thing, Mikey, would be having a beer with you. Right? Like, all of us getting together, having a beer after the competition or whatever it is, having a water, having a coffee, just the fellowship, like we all get to have in those interactions, learning your world in Canada, my world in America or Europe or wherever it's at, and saying like, "Oh, that's cool. You do it that way. We should look at that. Like, maybe we should look at that world and see what we can take away positive from it." Mm-hmm. The interaction, all of us hanging out at night after the competition and having those talks, which I think is going to be the backbone of rescue in the world, is us having those table talks, or now we're in podcast. That's what I miss the most, right? Hanging out with you guys and having a beer. And that's maybe, I would say in travel. I love travel. I love going all over the world. Those are two big things for me. Yeah.
I miss the group environment, right? Just being in that area with like-minded people, competitors, judges, organizers, volunteers, everybody. I just miss that environment, and the chaos of it all going on. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's phenomenal when you're on the competition floor and people are rooting for you in some crazy unknown language. And everyone's just stoked for you, no matter if you're a competitor or, it's even really funny when, your judges beside you and they're like, get up, get going. And it's really, it's amazing. And like you said, the travel, I love to travel. I'll travel until I'm in the grave. And that's one thing I miss. So, now I'm going to sneak this one in here for you. If there was one piece of advice you could give someone that's interested in competing, what would it be?
Ooh, competition. Have an open mind. This is not something that's strict. Don't go in there with these rules that you set for yourself or the industry. Go in there and know that like world's probably going to be blown up, and try not to stick. If you see a table full of gear and the judges say that's all you have to compete, just open your mind and realize, just find the rules and bend them and play within them. And that's why you're there, to have fun. That's what we're there for.
I love how you said bend them.
Bend them. Don't break them.
Bend them. Yeah,
Yeah.
bend them until they're just at that line of just fracturing.
We call that
But not quite
innovation,
there.
Mikey.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was, I will back that 110%. As a competitor, and I don't know how to toot my horn, but a mildly successful competitor.
World champion.
World champion, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, bend those rules. If you have the ability, basically how we looked at it when we were competing was, if they didn't tell you you couldn't do it in the briefing, and it doesn't break the golden rules of, going to no points and going splat on the concrete, you have a pretty big umbrella of stuff that you can do, and pull techniques from whatever background you have. If that's arborist, mountaineering, whatever it is, if it fits, it fits, man. Like I made a anchor on the on my working line with a 2-foot nylon sling as my anchor. Made a prusik, and that's how I hauled up a bucket, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be crazy intricate. It just it has to work. And having that ability and just push those envelopes just a little bit further than you expect. And how we kind of set it for ourselves was go until the judge tells you to stop.
That's awesome, Mikey. If you can clip the bolt, the beta's approved
Yeah.
beta. You can
Yeah.
clip the bolt. If it's 514, it's 514. You can clip the bolt, it's go.
Yeah.
Boot up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's all I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks, Mikey. I really appreciate having me on. It was good seeing you again, man. And
Yeah.
hopefully we see each other again at Rope Trip or Grimp Day, man. Super
Yeah.
psyched.
Absolutely. I'm super stoked. I'm really hoping that Grimp Day happens. They just pushed the dates to November. I'm really hoping that goes. I really hope to end up there to do some of this, do
I'd
the
be
podcast.
psyched. Yeah, September, right? I think it's September 8th through
Was
11th.
it was September or November, something like that. So
I don't know.
keep
Yeah,
your eyes out there, people.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Grimp Day's coming up, and if I'm lucky, I'll be there doing bringing you all the footage.
I'll either be competing or helping with safety, Mikey. So we'll be hanging out either way. Yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So if anyone would like to reach out to you, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
They can reach me at the Peak Rescue website, so peak-rescue.com, and just Micah, Micah at peak-rescue.com. Yeah, they'll figure it out. I'm available.
Yeah. Check them out on Instagram as well. Peak Rescue on Instagram. That's how we connected. And yeah, so thank you very much for taking the time to have this chat. It was a great time.
Yeah, have a good day, Mikey.
You too. Cheers. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. That was awesome. And thank you, Micah, for taking the time to indulge us in your stories of the Petzl rope trip. Obviously, competition is a great thing for lots of us. And yeah, I know that a lot of people may feel different about competition, but like Micah said, it breeds so many positive things. And I think that it's a great thing. I think that you should get involved with the Petzl rope trip. Obviously comes out every 2 years. And yeah, let's see you on the competition floor. All right. So if you like this episode, please make sure to hit the like button, smash the subscribe button. I know you want to, and hit the bell for notifications as I put out new content every Sunday. All right. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.